The Lion King feels like a wholesome movie, full of beauty, wisdom, and the circle of life. But beneath the surface is a message more sinister than you'd expect. In this video, I'm breaking down 3 myths in The Lion King that will change the way you see this movie forever. And it all begins with the brutal secret behind Simba's true rise to power. You see, in The Lion King, we're shown a fairy tale monarchy. The king's son is next in line to rule. But real lion societies are much darker. When young males like Simba reach sexual maturity, they're kicked out of the pride. Alone or in small coalitions with other lions, they roam the savannah searching for another pride. When they find one, they challenge the resident males in a fight that can end in death. But if they win, their next act is disturbing. They systematically kill every cub in the pride. This brutal act triggers the females to become fertile, also that the new king can produce their own offspring. So Simba's true rise to power would have been a story of violent conquest and infanticide. Now, of course, this is a Disney movie. They're obviously not going to show us Simba or Mufasa murdering innocent cubs. But for millions of us, this was the first time we were exposed to ideas around what it's like out there in nature. Which means that we grew up watching a sanitized version of the natural world. And so a lot of us developed a very romantic vision of nature. And as you'll come to see, this leads to attempts to help animals that actually do more harm than good. You'll notice that the suffering of prey animals like antelopes is remarkably absent from the movie. Unlike the lions, they're not portrayed as individuals with personalities, but as background props who literally worship their predator king. But can we just take a moment to reflect on what it must feel like to be attacked by a lion? I don't think we fully appreciate how good it is that we got out of the food chain.
Because for every other living thing, life ends by being eaten. That's how all life ends, is every single life except human life. Every life ends like this. Ah! Ah! Ah!
The Lion King makes you feel a certain way about the natural world. And to understand what I mean, we need to take a look at an idea at the very heart of this movie: the circle of life. When Simba worries about eating the antelopes, Mufasa explains that when lions die, they become the grass, and the antelopes eat the grass, and so everyone is connected in the grand circle of life. It suggests a harmonious cycle, a symbiotic relationship, where every death has meaning because it feeds another life. It gives a sense of fairness, of wisdom, and intentionality behind the natural world. And that feels comforting. It's certainly more comforting than the reality of natural selection by evolution, an unguided process where whatever helps genes replicate, whether it's beautiful, bizarre, or brutal, is what spreads. And this is where I have to ruin your childhood and show you Mufasa's penis. I know this sounds weird, but it's important, so hear me out.
It's not the biting that hurts her, it's the male's penis. It's barbed, with more than 100 tiny hooks. The barbs have 2 functions. They help scratch out any competing sperm from previous matings, and they also induce ovulation. The pain of scraping stimulates the female's brain. In response, it releases a specific hormone, which triggers the eggs in her ovaries to begin maturing.
At the gene level, it makes sense. It increases the chances of gene replication, even if it's very painful. And why does any of this matter? Well, the romanticization of nature means that we're less likely to see a problem where there are problems. We might start to think that natural things are good, even though malaria and cancer and a whole lot of natural things are actually really, really bad. Now, of course, it's not only nature that gets romanticized in children's movies. We shield kids from many harsh realities, and that's a good thing. The difference is that with issues like war or poverty, we eventually learn about them as we grow up. But with nature, we just graduate to watching David Attenborough documentaries which continue the same romanticised framing, and so most of us are not really given the chance to overcome our biased perception. But to really understand why this is so bad, we need to take a look at one more idea in The Lion King: the myth of balance.
Everything you see exists together in a delicate balance.
At the start of The Lion King, the animals seem happy. It isn't until Scar takes control of the kingdom, knocking the world out of balance, does everything become barren, with animals starving due to a lack of food and water. Before Simba takes back control and the delicate balance is restored, everything is okay again. But wait, things aren't okay, and they were never okay. Did you know that some species of turtle can lay over 2,000 eggs in their lifetime? Could you imagine if they all survived to adulthood and reproduced themselves, and their offspring survived and reproduced, and so on and so on? I mean, we would see explosions in the population sizes of turtles, but we don't. If a population remains stable, only 2 of those 2,000 will survive to adulthood and reproduce themselves. The rest will die from starvation or disease or from being eaten. And this reproductive strategy of having lots of offspring without investing parental care is the predominant strategy we see in nature, which means far from the idyllic view, the vast majority of wild animals are dying shortly after being born. That sucks, and it's hard for us to appreciate how much it sucks because most of us don't have to deal with these things. Human civilization has removed itself from the harsh realities of nature. For most of us, losing a child is a devastating tragedy, rare, shocking, unthinkable. But for most of human history, that was the norm. Half of all children died before the age of 15, which means most mothers would watch their children die. That sounds more like the circle of torture and death to me. The Lion King teaches us to ignore the chaotic cruelness of the natural world and tells us that everything happens for a reason. Everything is fine. And this idealized view of nature means that people donate to conservation programs that ensure more biodiversity or rewilding, and they think they are helping animals. But the missing perspective is the one that looks at the actual experiences of those animals, that takes an unflinching look at the suffering out there, the animals burning alive in wildfires, the injuries that never receive treatment. There are so many animals out there that, statistically speaking, almost everyone is a wild animal, most of whom will suffer and die in infancy in a world that we've been taught to romanticize. Now, perhaps you're thinking, yeah, okay, but what the hell are we going to do about it? Ecosystems are super complicated and interconnected that surely any attempt to try and improve things will just make things worse anyway. And yeah, I think that's a super important point. We don't want to make things worse for animals. We obviously need to be cautious. But before the advent of modern medicine, people once thought that the human body was too complicated and interconnected to be intervened in successfully. And we decided to use science. Over many years of research, we discovered ways to reliably help people with certain health conditions. We've already eradicated rabies from fox populations in Europe by dropping food from helicopters that contained an oral vaccine. In doing that, we spared thousands of these animals from a torturous disease, but there are many other torturous diseases out there. But we should also remember that we are already affecting the lives of wild animals all the time, whether it's from anthropogenic climate change, or agriculture, or the cities we build. The world is constantly being altered, changing the experiences of wild animals on every inch of this planet. Right now, we're not even trying to measure the impact on the animals' experiences, and I think moving towards considering their experiences is more likely to lead to a world where animals are better off than if we completely ignore those experiences. Look, I'm not saying that we should be going out there and making drastic changes anytime soon, but I do think we need to see more academic research on wild animal welfare, and I think we need to build a culture where we see animals not as mere cogs in the machine of an ecosystem, but as individuals who can feel pain and joy and have social relationships and, like us, care about what happens to them. The Lion King isn't an evil movie, it's a feel-good family film, one that I loved to watch growing up. But nature is not a feel-good movie. And we shouldn't assume that nature is already as good as it can be, because the universe doesn't care if animals suffer. And if we do, we can't just keep singing along.